The invisible breadwinner. You ever sit in a room full of people and feel like a guest in your own story? Hi, my name's Ava Callahan. I'm 34 years old, born and raised in Maple Bridge, Oregon, a town so small that the gas station doubles as a diner and the gossip mill runs faster than broadband ever did. By day and sometimes deep into the night, I run a wellness tech company that quietly crossed 7 figures last fiscal year. It started as a side hustle in my studio apartment in Seattle, and now it's a full-blown operation with 15 employees, 4 SaaS products and partnerships with 2 of the biggest holistic health brands in North America. I built it from scratch. No investors, no help, no fanfare. And no one in my family knows. Well, that's not entirely true. They do know I work with computers, or do something online with yoga, or whatever the latest vague rumor is. But the truth? The truth is, they have no idea that I pay for the mortgage on my brother's house, that I covered Mom's unexpected surgery last year, that the $50,000 loan my sister got from a friend to open her boutique. Yeah, that was me. The irony. Despite all that, I'm still the odd one out. To my parents, I'm the quiet one, the awkward one, the one who never really got over being single, the one who always shows up late to Thanksgiving and forgets to bring pie. My siblings. They're the golden children. Liam, the oldest, is a firefighter with a beer belly and a million stories. Katie, the baby of the family, runs a boutique and posts a new selfie every 5 minutes. Me, I'm just the background character in our family sitcom. I always bring gifts. I always smile through it. I nod, listen, compliment their successes, fake laugh at Dad's terrible jokes. But every time I go home to Maple Bridge, it's like walking into someone else's home. Like I left a long time ago and never got a key back. They don't ask how my work is going. They don't ask if I'm okay. They never did. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if I stopped sending the checks. Would they notice? Would they ask questions? Or would they just assume some magical fairy godmother decided to be generous? But then I remember I made a choice. I built the company in private and I kept it that way. Partly because I knew they wouldn't understand, but mostly because I didn't want to owe them anything. There's something weirdly empowering about knowing you're the reason your whole family is floating, and also knowing they'd still pick you last in dodgeball. Last Christmas, for example. I'd flown home from a conference in Toronto and went straight to our family dinner. Everyone was there. Liam and his wife Katie and her boyfriend Mom in her sparkly cardigan. Dad with his nasal laugh echoing through the hall. I walked in, carrying 6 gift bags, each handpicked from small businesses I'd partnered with, and no one even looked up. "Didn't think you were coming," Mom said flatly. No hug. "You still doing that tech thing?" Dad asked over the ham, slicing it like it had insulted his honor. I nodded. "Yeah, business is good." "That's nice," Katie said without looking up from her phone. "So you can finally get your car fixed." She didn't know I'd already leased her a new one under a shell company. She thought it was from an anonymous donor. And I just smiled and said, "Yeah, maybe. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to sound noble. I'm not. There's a little martyrdom in it, sure, but mostly it's control. If they knew where the money came from, I'd be trapped in gratitude and expectations. I'd be useful, but never loved." That night, I sat through 3 hours of them laughing, reminiscing, exchanging inside jokes I wasn't part of. And at the end of it, when I stood up to leave, my mother said, "Drive safe. It's icy out. You're not as used to bad weather since you moved away." Moved away. Like I abandoned them. Like I chose something else over them. And maybe I did. Maybe I chose to build a life where I could be in control, even if it meant no one clapped for me. Maybe I chose to create something that mattered, just not to them. As I walked out into the cold, my boots crunching on the icy gravel, I thought about all the money I'd wired just that month. Rent for Liam when his union stalled. Dental work for Mom. That last-minute loan for Katie's supplier who ghosted her. Not a thank you. Not even a suspicion. And I thought, what happens if I stop? But that's the funny thing about being the invisible one. You can disappear completely, and no one even realizes you're gone. Family gatherings. Frozen smiles. The next time I went home was for Easter brunch. It's a tradition in our family. Mom goes overboard with deviled eggs and pastel napkins. Dad dusts off the grill, even if it's barely 50 degrees, and everyone piles into the backyard like some Pinterest-worthy portrait of suburban bliss. Except I've always felt like I'm standing behind the frame out of focus. That morning, I arrived a little late. Not intentionally, it's just that my flight got delayed, and I barely had time to switch from CEO mode to daughter, who brings wine and smiles politely mode. I stopped at a local bakery and picked up an artisan peach tart. It cost more than it should have, but it looked Instagram-worthy, and I figured maybe that'd be enough for someone to notice I made the effort. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. "Is that store-bought?" Katie asked as I set it down, wrinkling her nose like I'd brought roadkill to brunch. "I got it from a bakery near the airport," I said, pulling off my coat. "Figured it'd be better than nothing." Mom murmured, rearranging it behind a tray of her homemade scones like mine might contaminate the good stuff. Dad was already halfway into a Bloody Mary and chatting loudly with Liam about new gutters or lawn treatments or whatever dad things dads obsess over. When he saw me, he gave a vague nod. "Still in Seattle?" he asked, sipping. "Yeah." "Still running the company?" I said, lightly, knowing it would go nowhere. That's nice." I'd only been there 10 minutes, and already I wanted to fake a phone call and slip out the side gate. I wandered into the kitchen to help with prep, because that's what you do when you're the daughter who never quite fits. You compensate. You clean. You slice cucumbers you'll never eat, and offer to refill drinks for people who don't thank you. You smile so much your face hurts, just so no one can say you were cold. And all the while the noise of their closeness buzzed around me like static. Inside jokes. Childhood stories. "Remember that time, Liam?" "Katie, you always did." I faded into the wallpaper just like always. Then came the prayer. Dad always insists on saying grace before meals, and he always ends with some variation of "Thank you, Lord, for the food, the family, and the blessings we've received, even if we don't always know where they come from." Every time I want to laugh, and cry, and flip the table. Because I know exactly where some of those blessings came from. I know that Katie's boutique wouldn't have survived its second year without the emergency marketing budget I snuck into her PayPal under a fake name. I know that Liam's second kid wouldn't have had a safe crib if I hadn't covered the $200 balance on the registry through a back-end gift portal. I even know that the house we were all standing in, the one my parents proudly renovated last year thanks to good budgeting. Yeah, that new roof, my money. But sure, let's thank the Lord for the anonymous angel. After the food, we did the usual round of forced photos. Mom passed around mimosas. Liam's wife showed off baby photos. And Katie, always performing, asked loudly, "So Ava, what is it you do again?" Cue every head turning toward me. "I run a wellness tech company," I said, swallowing the urge to add that paid for your emergency payroll last fall. "Oh, right," Katie said, sipping. "Like apps and stuff." "Something like that." "She does yoga online," Mom added helpfully to absolutely no one's request. I could feel my teeth grinding behind my smile. No one asked about the office we just expanded to in Vancouver. No one asked about the product we launched that was already trending on LinkedIn. No one asked how I was doing. Not once. Instead, Katie launched into a story about a TikTok influencer visiting her store, and I drifted out of the circle like fog. I sat on the edge of the patio, picking at the leftover tart no one touched. The spring air was cool against my skin, and somewhere inside I could hear Liam laughing like someone had just told the funniest joke in the world. I stared at the grass and thought, why do I keep showing up? Why do I keep playing the part of the good daughter when this script was written without me? I could disappear, cut the money, block the emails, vanish. But the truth is, I wasn't ready. Not yet. Some small part of me, some inner child or bruised ego still wanted to be seen, to be valued, to hear one person, just one, say, "We're proud of you." But instead, as I gathered my things to leave, Mom stopped me at the door and said, "Next time don't worry about bringing dessert. We had plenty." It wasn't even cruel. It was casual, offhand, like I was a neighbor who'd overstayed her welcome. I smiled, nodded, and walked back to my rental car where I sat for 5 minutes with my hands on the steering wheel, engine off. That was the moment I started wondering, what happens when the golden children fall? How I got here. The first time I realized I was invisible, I was 7 years old. We were in the backyard. Mom had just baked a cake for Liam's 10th birthday. Chocolate with blue icing, his favorite. He was running around in his plastic firefighter helmet, already obsessed with saving people. Katie was still a toddler then, wobbling in her high chair with frosting on her nose. I remember tugging at Mom's apron, asking if I could have a slice. She glanced down. "Not yet, sweetie. Let Liam go first. It's his day." I nodded. It was always someone else's day. As I got older, I figured it'd change. That maybe if I got good grades, they'd notice. I brought home straight A's. I placed first in the science fair. I got a scholarship. I got nothing but a "that's nice" and a new chore chart on the fridge. So I stopped expecting recognition. I learned to build my own momentum. By the time I was 19, I'd moved out 2 states over to Seattle. I was working 3 part-time jobs while studying computer science at a community college. Katie was still the princess back home, getting help with rent and emotional support money every few months. Liam, already married, moved back in with his wife for a while when he was laid off. No one offered me a dime. Not that I asked. I graduated. No one came to the ceremony. When I launched my first app, an AI journaling tool designed to help people manage anxiety, I sent the link to our family group chat. Not one reply. 2 years later, that same app was featured in a BuzzFeed listicle. My downloads exploded. I used the earnings to bootstrap my company, SageLoop. The name came from an inside joke with myself. I was the sage no one listened to. And I was stuck in a loop. I hired my first developer, then a UX designer, then a content team. I started getting invited to panels, podcasts, summits. I did all the interviews under my own name, but somehow none of them made it past my family's filter bubble. And maybe that was for the best, because with each new hire, each new milestone, I realized something strange I didn't want them to know. If they found out, it would change everything. They'd treat me differently. They'd smile more, maybe. But not for me, for the money, for what I could do for them. And I wasn't ready to test that theory just yet. Still, I couldn't help myself from watching them struggle. Katie's boutique almost went under during the pandemic. One quiet night, she posted an Instagram story asking if anyone had a friend in PR. I called in a favor. Got her featured in a lifestyle blog. The next week, her sales tripled. She posted, "So grateful to the universe for this lucky break." Liam's oldest kid needed braces. He told Mom it would cost too much and they might delay it. 2 weeks later, a scholarship from a local dental nonprofit covered the cost. I made the donation under a separate LLC. Mom started dropping hints about how God always provides. It was ironic, wasn't it? The daughter they forgot was keeping the whole circus afloat. But I didn't resent it, not then. I told myself it was love. Quiet love. The kind that doesn't need a spotlight. But love, real love, doesn't feel like constantly auditioning for acceptance. One evening, maybe a year before that Easter brunch, I got a call from Katie. She sounded tired, embarrassed. "I know this is weird," she said, "but do you have like $2,000? Just short term. I swear I'll pay you back." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just waited. I wouldn't ask. But Mom said you were doing okay. I mean, she's not sure what you do exactly, but she said you're not starving or anything. I wired the money that night. She never paid me back, and she never brought it up again. That was the turning point. I realized they were willing to take, quietly, gratefully, even if they didn't really believe I was capable of giving. That same month, I took a solo trip to Banff. The mountains, the silence, the cold, it reset something in me. I hiked alone, ate alone, sat with my thoughts, and I decided something. I would keep supporting them for now. But not because they deserved it, because I did. I deserved to know I could build an empire in silence, that I could love without applause, that I could stand in the shadows and still carry the weight of generations. But there's a limit to every load, and mine was starting to shift. One day I knew there would be a moment, a single comment, a glance, a joke that would tilt the whole thing, and when it came, I promised myself I'd be ready. All I had to do was wait. The secret ledger. By now, I could probably draw you a map of every corner of my family's financial landscape, every mortgage payment, every surprise emergency, every request that came disguised as coincidence. I never planned on becoming their private bank, but once it started, it was easier to keep the illusion alive than pull the curtain back. At least if I stayed invisible, I couldn't be resented for what I gave or blamed when I stopped. It started with small things. Katie's rent was late. She posted a teary Instagram story about how hard it was being an entrepreneur. 2 days later, her balance was cleared courtesy of a one-time grant from a women-owned business initiative. One that didn't officially exist. I created 3 shell LLCs just to move money without a trace. Each one had a different name, a different logo, a different story. They were just fronts. One was supposedly a local arts foundation, another a small business accelerator, and the third was called Shoreleaf Grants, which sounded vague enough to be real. Liam's kids got brand new iPads for school from a tech literacy charity. That was me. When my parents' heating system went out in the dead of winter, a veteran support program footed the bill. Also, me. I even helped Dad once, though it hurt more than I expected. He needed dental work, the expensive kind. He told Liam on the phone I was accidentally on the call because of a misdial that he didn't want to ask that girl for help. So I had a check mailed from a dental grant program in Seattle. 3 weeks later, he was telling everyone at church what a miracle it had been, and I let him. Because somewhere in the back of my mind I thought, maybe this is what love looks like. Maybe not all love is loud and labeled. Maybe mine was just encrypted. But love isn't supposed to feel like hiding or bleeding in secret. I started keeping track. I had a spreadsheet tucked away in a locked folder labeled tax stuff, just in case I ever needed to remember how far I'd gone. Column A name, column B date, column C amount, column D alias used, column E response received. That last one was almost always blank. Over the years, the numbers ballooned. $500 here, $1, $200 there. A surprise $7,000 when Katie's boutique flooded and she needed inventory replaced. She never asked how the landlord's insurance got processed so fast. Sometimes I imagined what would happen if I printed that ledger out, walked into a family dinner, and slammed it down on the table like a mic drop. Would they feel ashamed? Grateful, angry? Would they finally see me? Nah. They'd probably argue about the formatting. Once in a moment of self-pity, I shared part of the story with a friend. Not someone close, just a colleague over wine after a conference. She listened, nodded, and then said something I still think about. You're either their hero or their ghost, Ava. But you can't be both forever. That one hit me like a car door in the dark. The thing is, I didn't want to be a hero. Heroes expect thanks. They show up cape-flapping name on every plaque. I just wanted to be included, to matter, to be someone whose birthday didn't get forgotten 4 years in a row. I had one rule through all this: never ask for anything in return. Not favors, not acknowledgement, not even a thank you text. But deep down, I was still keeping score. I was human. I wanted something, just a glance, a nod, a moment, where someone turned to me and said, "You're the reason we're okay." Instead, they treated me like a distant cousin who somehow always showed up with perfect hair and zero drama. Until one day something shifted. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I'd just come out of a brand strategy meeting and my phone had 16 missed calls. All from Katie. I called back, heart thudding, thinking someone had died. Nope, just drama. She was crying. Her business bank account was frozen. Fraud alert. A vendor bounced a payment. She was panicking, spiraling, saying things like, "I think I'm going to have to close down." And I felt the urge to fix it. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to wire another $3,000. Maybe 5. Maybe just enough to buy her another month. But I didn't. I paused. I sat with the silence. And for once I just listened. "I can't keep bailing you out," I said quietly. What she hiccuped. I said, "I can't keep fixing this. You need to find a way. Talk to Mom. Talk to Liam. But they don't have money. I know. There was a long pause. Wait, she said, her voice thinning. Have you been the one? I didn't answer. The silence between us grew like a storm cloud. Then I said, I have to go. Good luck, Katie. And I hung up. I stared at the screen for a long time. My hands were shaking. Not with guilt, but with something sharper. Relief. For the first time in years, I didn't pick up the check. I didn't rescue anyone. I just let it be. And you know what? The world didn't end. But something else was beginning. Something subtle, slow, and irreversible. I was starting to pull back, one wire at a time. The dinner that snapped me. It was my father's birthday. I almost didn't go. My flight was delayed. I hadn't slept in 2 days. And frankly, I was tired of pretending. But Mom had texted me 3 times in all caps. Please come, it would mean a lot to Dad. And the final dagger. Katie made a cake. So I showed up, tired, hollow-eyed, in a navy trench coat that I didn't even hang up when I arrived. I just stood there clutching a bottle of aged scotch I'd had shipped from Alberta, because I knew it was Dad's favorite, even though he'd never thanked me for the last 3 bottles. The house smelled like roast beef and vanilla candles. Liam was already camped out on the couch with a beer. Katie was in the kitchen frosting her lopsided cake like she was auditioning for a reality show. Mom was running around adjusting throw pillows that didn't need adjusting. Look who decided to show up, Liam said without looking at me. I didn't respond. Dinner was the usual performance, everyone laughing too loud. Katie reciting her latest online drama. Dad sharing a long-winded story about his days in construction like he was Paul Bunyan reborn. I sat at the end of the table smiling on autopilot, cutting my food into tiny pieces I never ate. Halfway through the meal, Katie said, "Oh, I almost forgot my boutique got nominated for a local impact award." Mom clapped. "That's amazing, sweetheart." Dad beamed. "Didn't I always say you'd do something big?" Liam toasted her with his fork. "Proud of you, sis." I waited. Just for fun. To see if anyone would look down the table and say, "And Ava didn't. Your company just hit something like $1 million in sales?" Nothing. Not a glance. Not a pause. I cleared my throat. "Actually, we just crossed 1.2 million last quarter. Gross revenue." They blinked. Dad squinted. "Wait, My company," I said softly. Katie furrowed her brows. "You have a company I thought you freelanced." I nearly laughed. "No. I run a wellness tech firm. 15 employees. International clients. I'm hiring a VP of operations next quarter." The silence was immediate, awkward, suspicious. Dad chuckled like I'd told a cute lie. "You're serious?" I nodded. Katie's face scrunched. "Then why are you always so quiet?" It was Liam who said it, fork halfway to his mouth. "Well, guess money doesn't buy personality." And that was it. The moment. The snap. I set my fork down gently. My hands were calm, but my heart was doing cartwheels. Not with rage, but with clarity. I stood up. "I think I'm done," I said. They looked confused. "Dinner?" Mom asked. "No, all of it." "Ava," she said, a nervous laugh in her throat. "What are you talking about?" I pulled a folded sheet of paper from my coat pocket. The spreadsheet. 1 page. Small font. Highlights. Totals. I walked around the table and placed it next to Dad's plate. "What's this?" he asked, picking it up. "That," I said, "is what I've done for this family for the last 9 years. He looked at the numbers. Katie leaned in. "What? Wait. Shoreleaf grants. That was you." Liam's face fell. "I covered your dental work, Dad. I paid your rent, Katie. Liam, I bought your daughter's school supplies for 3 years straight. That new roof last year. Me. Every miracle you all prayed for was me writing checks in the dark." Dead silence. Mom blinked rapidly like she was processing a bad dream. Why didn't you just tell us? Would you have treated me differently if I had... Probably," Liam muttered. "Exactly," I said, turning to him. "You don't see me. None of you ever have. Not when I was a kid. Not when I graduated, not now. I've been your safety net. Your shadow. Your ghost." Katie looked pale. "We didn't ask for..." "No, you didn't. but you were more than happy to receive. Dad stood. Now wait just a minute. I've waited my whole life, I interrupted, voice steady. For someone to ask me how I'm doing. To say thank you. To care. I pulled my coat back on. I'm done, Dad. Happy birthday. And I left. I walked out of that house and into the cold night. No one followed me. Not even to return the scotch. The drive back to the hotel was quiet. My phone buzzed once. A message from Katie. Ava, we need to talk. Please don't do anything crazy. I turned it off. Back in my room, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat by the window, and stared at the small town lights. I'd always wondered what it would feel like breaking the silence. Turns out it didn't feel like fire or glory. It felt like peace. Let them miss me. I didn't go silent all at once. It was more like slowly turning down the volume on a radio station that had been blasting static into my ears for years. One notch at a time. A quiet retreat. After that dinner, I stopped answering group texts. I left the family chat on mute, then archived it. Birthdays passed, I didn't send gifts. I didn't call. I didn't PayPal Katie her monthly emergency fund or cover Liam's overdue utilities through some anonymous grant. I didn't even check in on Mom after her doctor's appointment. I figured if they really needed me, they'd ask. And they didn't. Not at first. I think they were stunned. Maybe even embarrassed. They had just enough pride to pretend everything was fine. But the thing about pride is, it doesn't keep the lights on. And pride doesn't pay the overdue bill on the boutique's back rent. Within 3 weeks, the signs began to show. Katie posted a cryptic Instagram story, black background, white text. Some people only love you when you're useful. I almost laughed. Almost. Liam's wife messaged me out of nowhere. A simple, hey, just checking in. You okay? I left it on read. 2 months in, I got my first voicemail from Mom in over a year. Her voice was low and for once not rehearsed. Ava, I don't know what's going on, but your father's been off, and things have been tight. Just call me. Please. I didn't. Instead, I turned all that energy I used to spend on them inward. I hired a therapist. I started boxing lessons. I joined a weekend writers group. I cooked for myself. I took morning walks just because I could. And I laughed real laughter, not the brittle keep the peace kind I used to fake at dinner tables. At work, Sage Loop was thriving. My team noticed the shift. You're lighter, my assistant said one afternoon, sliding me a new product launch plan. I let go of something heavy, I replied. What I didn't tell her was that I also hired a private auditor to scrub the old shell companies I'd used to funnel money to my family. I closed every account, transferred the funds back into a single clean trust. I called it the Callahan Foundation. Not because I wanted to give to them again, but because I might want to give to someone who needed it more. 3 months after I cut them off, I received a letter, handwritten, from Katie. Ava, I don't know if you'll read this or care. I said some things I shouldn't have. I didn't know about all the stuff you did. None of us did. I'm not asking for money. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For the years we ignored you. For not taking you seriously. And for the record, the boutique is failing. But I think maybe I needed that. Kay. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever gotten. And I cried. Not because it fixed anything, but because someone finally saw me. I didn't reply, but I kept the letter in my desk drawer. Around that time, Liam called. No message. Just a missed call. Then another. Then another. Eventually I picked up. Hey, I said flat. Ava. His voice cracked a little. I didn't know. Didn't know what? How much you were doing. Behind the scenes. We should have seen it. You didn't want to. Silence. Dad's been asking about you, he said finally. He's not doing great. Health-wise. That's not new, I said quieter now. He misses you. No, I corrected gently. He misses what I gave. Not who I am. He didn't argue. Liam was never the worst. He was just caught in the current. Maybe we all were. Ava, he said, I'm sorry. I let that hang for a moment. I know, I replied. He asked if he could visit. I said not yet. Let them sit in the silence a while longer. Let them feel the edges of my absence. Let them live with the weight I used to carry for them every day. Let them miss me. And in the meantime, I rebuilt myself. Piece by piece, day by day, I created a life I actually wanted. One not built around pleasing people who only saw me as useful. One where I could walk into a room and not be afraid of being overlooked, because now I carried my own light. It was strange, though, how quiet the world became when I stopped holding everyone else's chaos. Like someone had shut off the noise machine. But in that quiet, I found something I hadn't had in years. Peace. And it was addicting. When the truth spills. It happened on a Sunday. I was lounging on the couch in my apartment, a sunbeam cutting through the blinds and warming my feet as I sipped coffee from my favorite chipped mug. Sage Loop had just signed its first international licensing deal, and I was finally considering that trip to Iceland I'd always promised myself. Then my phone rang. It was Liam. Again. I let it go to voicemail like I had the last 5 times. But this time, he left one. And this time, his voice wasn't calm. It was tight. Breathless. Ava, you need to call me, now. Mom knows. Everyone knows. And it's bad. Katie said, just call me. My stomach dropped. I called him back before I could talk myself out of it. Liam. Jesus, finally, he breathed. It's blown up. What blew up? Katie. She told Mom everything. All the payments. The grants. The house. The fake LLCs. The boutique stuff. Everything. How I asked. My voice was steady, but my heart was thumping like a war drum. She was drunk at some party. Trying to sound impressive, I think. Someone asked how she got through the pandemic, and she said, and I quote, "I have a fairy god sister who bankrolls my life." She thought it was cute. I guess Mom overheard it through one of her friends. I closed my eyes. Of course. She came to me, Liam continued, asking if it was true, if you'd been the one helping all these years. And I didn't lie. Of course he didn't. And now I asked. He exhaled. Mom's devastated. She's pacing the house like a ghost. Dad won't talk. He just sits in the den with the TV off. He hasn't said a word since last night. Why? Because they feel guilty, or because they're embarrassed. Someone found out. There was a long pause on the line. I think both he admitted. But mostly, they're scared. I raised my eyebrows. Scared. You were the safety net, Ava. The invisible one. Now the net's gone, and they know it. And now that the truth's out, the questions are coming fast. Like, why didn't they know? Why didn't they ask? Why were they so blind? I stared out the window. The clouds were moving fast that day, like the whole sky was restless. They weren't blind, Liam, I said. They just didn't want to look. Later that day, I got a call from Katie. I didn't answer, but she left a message anyway. Ava, I messed up. I didn't mean for it to come out like that. Mom's been crying for hours. She said you must have hated us, that she doesn't know how to face you. Please just call me. Let me make it right. Funny how people only ask to make it right after it's already broken. But the real surprise came that evening. My doorbell rang. No one ever rang my doorbell. When I opened it, Mom was standing there, holding a manila envelope. Her makeup was smudged like she'd been crying on the plane. Her coat was too light for the Seattle chill. Her hands were shaking. Ava, she said, voice thin. May I come in? I didn't speak. I just stepped aside. She sat on the couch like she didn't know what to do with her hands. I offered her tea. She declined. She just held the envelope in her lap fingers, worrying the corners. I read the ledger. She said finally, "Of course you did." She looked up at me, and for once there was no performance in her face. No judgment. Just a slow, dawning ache. I had no idea. I sat across from her. You didn't want to. You were always the strong one. The one who didn't need help. Attention. I didn't need attention, I said. I needed recognition. She nodded slowly. I failed you. I waited. I failed you as a mother. There it was. No excuses, no half-sorries. I should have seen you, she whispered. Heard you? Asked. The words sank into the room like sunlight into soil. I didn't say anything for a while. Then softly I asked, why now? She held up the envelope. Because I wanted to give you this. I took it, opened it. Inside was a photo. Me, age 9, holding up a spelling bee ribbon. I was grinning, missing a front tooth. No one else in the photo. I found it in an old box, she said. You were so proud that day. And I was too busy making Liam's lunch to go to the assembly. I told myself it didn't matter, that you'd be fine. I said, almost smiling. But I shouldn't have had to be. She nodded. I don't expect forgiveness, she said, standing slowly. I just needed you to know. I see you now. And then she left. I stood in the doorway long after she was gone. I looked at that photo for a long, long time, and then I framed it. Not because I needed the reminder of what they missed, but because that little girl, she deserved to be seen. I'm not coming back. The house felt lighter after she left. Not in the happy summer morning kind of way. More like when you finally stop holding your breath after realizing no one is coming to rescue you, and somehow you're still standing. For days after Mom's visit, I waited for the guilt to crawl in. I expected it to sneak through the cracks in my peace and whisper, "You should go back. You should forgive. You should fix it." But it didn't come. Instead, I felt clarity. I kept the framed photo of 9-year-old me on my bookshelf. Not as a grudge, just as proof. Proof that I'd always been enough even if no one noticed. Especially then. 1 week later, my phone rang again. This time it was Dad. I let it ring twice before I picked up. "Ava," he said, voice gravelly and unsure. I don't know how to start this." "Then start with honesty," I said, folding laundry on the couch. "I wasn't a great father," he said flatly. "You probably don't need me to say it. But I need to say it." My heart didn't soften. But it didn't harden either. It just listened. "I didn't understand you," he went on. "You were always quiet. Fierce, but quiet. You didn't need me the way Liam and Katie did. I guess I thought that meant you were fine. That I didn't have to show up." "But I wasn't fine," I replied gently. He exhaled. "I know." Silence stretched between us. "I saw that ledger," he finally said. "Your mom showed me." And I cried. I didn't say anything. I didn't cry when my brother died. I didn't cry when I broke my leg. But reading those numbers, realizing what you'd done for us while we acted like you didn't matter, I cried like a damn baby. I waited. Not out of spite, but because I wanted to hear it all. "I don't know if I can make up for it," he said, voice cracking. "But if there's any way I can start." "You can," I said. He held his breath. "Start by understanding that I'm not coming back." His silence was loud. "I love you," I continued, "but I'm not returning to the role you built for me. I'm not your secret savior, your backup plan, or your financial cushion. I'm your daughter. And if that's not enough without the checks, then this conversation ends here." I could hear him swallow. "It is enough. It is Ava." I nodded to myself. "Then maybe we can begin something new. Slowly. Carefully. But only if it's built on truth." "I can do that," he said. I didn't visit them after that call. Not for a while. But I started answering messages again. I joined one FaceTime birthday call, no balloons, no transfer of funds. Just presence. Katie sent me updates sometimes. Her boutique eventually closed. She picked up a job as a visual merchandiser at a chain department store. "It's humbling," she said. "But for once I'm standing on my own feet." Liam emailed me a picture of his daughter at her science fair. She'd won second place with a project on renewable energy. In the background, taped to her trifold board, was a quote, "Sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest purpose. She says you inspired her," he wrote. I didn't cry. But my chest ached in that slow healing way, like muscle finding strength after a long time of being still. And then came the email. From a woman named Karina. Single mom. New entrepreneur. Trying to launch a wellness startup in Portland, but couldn't get traction. She'd read an old podcast transcript of mine buried in the archives. You said, "Support should feel like wind at your back, not chains around your neck." It made me think of the kind of mentor I want to be for my daughter. Thank you. That's when I knew what to do with the trust I'd built, the one with all the money that used to disappear into my family's bottomless gratitude void. I renamed it, not the Callahan Foundation. I called it the 9-Year-Old Project, named after the version of me who never got picked first, who smiled through being forgotten, who dreamed even when the room felt too small for dreaming. And the mission: simple, quiet support for loud dreams, especially for women building something out of nothing without applause. I didn't need my family to clap for me anymore, because now I had something better. I had peace, purpose, and people who saw me not as a savior, not as a stranger, but as someone who finally walked into her own light. So if you're listening to this right now, and you've ever felt like the background character in your own life, I see you. You are not invisible. You are not small. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep anyone else warm. Let them miss you. And in the meantime, go build the world you deserve.